Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Awakening Educator.
I'm Susan Andrian.
And I'm Megan Sweet. And we are together in person.
In the studio for the first time since
last March. So more than a year. That's pretty incredible. So excited to be with you. Thank you for being here. Oh, I know. We're together. It's so nice. So today's show is just actually us talking. Why are we doing that, Susan?
We have, throughout the pandemic, been talking with each other about emerging from this better than we came in. And we're at year 2. We just hit our second year reunion of the show. And we've been talking a lot about relaunching and making sure that we are highlighting the stories that we want to highlight and reflecting on all of the amazing content that we have. And I'm really, really proud of what we've done. And now wanting to launch the next phase of the Awakening Educator to really elevate the stories that are important in this moment, in this time in education, because I think we're at such an incredibly pivotal moment in education. Things are transforming, and we want to hear and learn about what's happening in the world.
Yeah, that's a great. That's right. I agree. That's what we talked about. I think we were, very transparently as we were thinking about and reflecting on the first 2 years. I loved our format. I love our format of going policy to practice and looking at issues from different points of view. But what we found was in doing that, we were a little bit controlling the story or controlling or limiting actually the access to other stories that were out there. Because they didn't fit into that 3 or 4 part series, we weren't really taking them up. And I think for me, what became really clear over this last year, as we've all moved into the pandemic, is that how we've moved through this last year is really personal and really individual. And each one of us, even in our own households, are experiencing it differently. And certainly folks are experiencing education really differently than they did before. And because the unit is us, a teacher in the classroom, in their own little computer, and students are experiencing it almost individually, it felt like a good time to just start capturing the stories a different way. So that's what we're going to start doing. We're wanting to just start opening it up to those stories. It certainly could mean that we'll have series that are built in there.
And we're still definitely going to be talking about policy to practice.
Right.
We just won't be able to do it in that same specific structured format for series.
Right. So the series, we actually have a show coming up where we think there actually will be at least a 2-part series. So we will be having those, but maybe not in the same format as before. So we just really want to open it up to everyone and have some of those conversations. We're also changing the format a little bit. So we're going to go back to having breaks, commercial breaks. So you'll see us breaking at least once or twice during the show. Just providing opportunities to share probably in the beginning stuff that Susan and I are up to, but then also later on other resources or other information about folks.
Yeah, and we also in that time we're hoping to highlight some of the really great entrepreneurial folks that we know eventually. So as Megan said, we're going to start with us, but really thinking about who are the sponsors and how do they reflect our show,
right? So
that they're sponsoring us, but we also want to make sure that they match who we are and what's important to us. Because there's some wonderful practitioners out there with their products that we think are bringing value to the community.
Yeah, that's right. So maybe we can just talk a little bit about what this last year has been for each one of us. And then the final part of our new series is this came from Susan. And I just think it's brilliant, is really highlighting an element of a story of an educator that we really like and that we really thought was interesting. And so we'll do that today towards the end of the show. And so that'll be brought in. Every show now is highlighting just someone from the field, someone that just caught our attention.
Spotlight on education.
Spotlight on an education or on an educator. So we'll be doing that too. But I think it would also be interesting just to hear what your journey's been like over the last year, and I could share mine as well.
And I'm going to remember to look this way because I know we've gotten we're seeing each other for the first time, staring into each other's eyes and mouths. What have I been up to? Was that the question?
What have you been up to?
So it's been an incredibly transformative year. As we said, we're working moms. So to be home supporting my teenagers through this online learning experience, so both as an educator and as a parent, and seeing the difference between how their schools showed up during this time has been really interesting, and helping them manage in the same kind, some of the same challenges were there that were when they were in person, and some new ones emerged, and sort of just that feeling of isolation that they experienced has been really, really hard.
Yeah.
And during this time, I have been certified in the neurosequential model. I think before we went out, I had been certified in phase 1, and I've been working really hard to be certified in phase 2, which has me as a trainer for educators and clinicians in this neurodevelopmental model of problem solving, clinical problem solving, and student problem solving in community education communities. And it's been transformative, and it also aligns with a lot of the way I already thought about trauma and resiliency. And I'm actually moving away from the language of trauma to really thinking about stress response. We all have stress. Trauma is an extreme form of stress, but stress is really an important part of our lives, and learning how it impacts us physically, emotionally, spiritually, cognitively, and then really understanding based on our body and our experience, what do we need to do to show up for that particular person in the state that they're in and the experiences that they've had to help move them to a more resilient stress response system. And so it's been super powerful learning experience through the Child Trauma Academy and with Dr. Bruce Perry, who we interviewed. Almost, wasn't one of our last few interviews before we went on the pandemic?
I think it was. Yeah. Yeah, it was a fun interview.
It was a fun interview. And so that I finished that, and then just supporting schools through this transformative time. And it's been interesting to see the shift in emphasis on social emotional, and that in many ways teachers were able to participate in the coordination of services, in the mental health thinking about families in a way that they never could when they were in the building, because they just didn't have the same kind of flexibility and time. So that has been a great opportunity to really engage them in understanding who their students are and what's happening in their students' lives, and watching them build relationships with the families, and see how powerful it is as an educator to partner as co-educators with parents. And I'm hoping a lot of that continues. So that's a piece. I mean, I'm sure it could go on more, but I feel like those were the highlights of the year and a half. With the, there's plenty of lowlights, but I felt like those were some highlights.
Yeah, I mean, I've been really impressed by the work that you've been doing. I'm always impressed by the work that you're doing with students and families in schools and addressing need. And for me, I'm so grateful that I feel like finally people understand the social emotional learning and attending to stress response is just like a baseline for everyone. And I think it's one of the benefits that's come out of the pandemic is a more shared appreciation that that's a real thing, because everybody's had it together. It's easy to kind of blow it off when it's one person, or we think it's just, we can try and isolate it, but everyone's had a shared experience of so much challenge this year. And just the impact of the isolation on each one of us has been different. So for me, that's really exciting, and I'm really appreciative that you've been doing that. For me this year, it's been a lot. I mean, I'll be honest. So I've been the leader of a nonprofit organization, a number 2, so not the executive director, but number 2, and over a whole program team. I have 24 staff members, And we provide programming for teachers throughout the world, actually. And so part of my work has always been on Zoom. A good part of my work had always been meeting with my team on Zoom, because they're spread all over the country. They're not all necessarily local. In fact, I only have one employee that's local. Everyone else is somewhere else. So being on Zoom wasn't a new experience for me per se, but what was new and what was challenging this last year was that all the other meetings that I normally didn't have on Zoom were also on Zoom. So I went from maybe 30% of my work week being on Zoom, or 40% maybe, to 95% of my work week being on Zoom, and just experiencing the profound impact of that. So moving from having, no interactions with, the only time you interact with, people that I would normally see every day was if we scheduled a Zoom call. And so just the Zoom fatigue, which some people talk about, for me has been a really real thing this year.
Absolutely.
And I've been trying to do my own side business for a long time. And so just noticing myself and having been home, and like, I took advantage of that in the worst possible way of like working way too much. So for me, a lot of the last year has been working 80 to 100 hours a week, tons of Zoom time, and just wearing myself out. And losing a lot of joy. I think taking care of my son has been a big part of it. It's been great having him be home. It was definitely weird at first, and I think he's looking forward to not being at home anymore, but I've liked having him at home. But just all the balancing of going from, Zoom meeting to Zoom meeting, work project to work project. And then at the end of a long day where I'm tired, then I pivot and take care of my kid and try to attend to him. And he's got his own emotions and feelings based on having been locked up for so long inside the house. I definitely got to kind of a breaking point. So, and decided I had to do something different, and started exploring. I don't think I even talked with you about it, Susan, but I started exploring what was behind some of my behaviors and some of this overworking that I was doing, and discovered some like I'm not worthy kind of messages in there.
Some core beliefs that weren't
beliefs that maybe I wasn't worth it. And so I started doing this like worthiness work. There's a book by a woman who wrote about it. And I'll find the link to it because I thought it was just so interesting. But I did tell you about it.
Yeah, you told me about it.
But it's really like looking at some of these patterns. So I started just exploring some of the patterns in my life and how I was showing up, and what I was kind of putting up with, and got to this point where I'm not willing to work so much anymore.
Good for you. I'm so glad that you got to that point.
Finally. And so I'm very excited to announce that I am leaving my traditional 9-to-5 job and finally believe in myself enough to take the risk to start my own consulting firm, which I've had on the side, but to have that be the thing is something I'm really excited about. And that I start that on May 1st. And so there'll be some more information about that. But the beginning part of that will really actually just be doing nothing and just being, just being me and just being, just connecting back in with myself, doing all the things that I write about in my book and we talk about here around like prioritizing yourself and your own well-being. I'm actually going to do that.
Yeah, just taking the pause to be able to decompress.
Taking the pause to decompress, choosing to believe in myself, and trusting that things will work out, but I don't need to micromanage and control everything. So, so I'm excited. I definitely have some ideas about what I want to do. You and I have talked about some ideas about some things to do. So there's going to be stuff coming. But I think it's I share it because so often people talk about taking this leap and they're like, I just jumped and everything worked out. And I've always been really irritated by that.
Yeah.
Because it's not that easy for all of us to be able to take that leap.
It's hard.
It's scary.
It's scary.
And I've been trying to like talk myself. I feel like I've been at the edge of the diving board for years. So it wasn't like a simple decision just to go ahead and jump and do it. So I just want to say that to everyone too. Some people can do it and leap right away and you're amazing and congratulations. And that's not me. But I am finally at this place where I feel clear and confident. And so taking the leap doesn't feel so scary anymore. And so anyway, I'm excited to see what will come.
It's super exciting, and it's making me. I've been reading this 20. I forget exactly the name book, but I will find it. But it's a daily daily thinking and meditation book, and they were talking about that very thing, and the in Indiana Jones, and I forget which one, but in the moment where there is a bridge, but you can't see it, and that faith that it takes to step out when you can't see what foundationally is there. Like you don't know what is foundationally there, but you have so much foundational stuff. If you really thought about it and wrote them all down, it's going to be an exciting. You have so much to offer the world, and it's really. I'm so glad you're doing this for yourself, and I'm so glad you're doing this for educational folks out there who are going to have the gift of your support and services.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I said we'll see what it will turn up. I mean, I'm excited, and for me, it also just came down to modeling for my son, because he did drop a truth bomb on me this year.
He will do that.
Basically just reflecting that, watching how hard I was working, and how little joy there was associated with that work. It didn't make him really want to grow up and have a job. And I'm with him on that. So I need to be able to demonstrate taking the risk, but also living a life that includes a lot of joy, and that's not just being like self-indulgent. That's like important. So so that's what I'm up to.
That's exciting.
We'll see. You want to see the video?
Yeah.
Susan? Okay. So are we at that time? The featured person?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. So I'm going to figure out how to share all my things, because I have to learn. So I'm going to optimize for screen sharing with the video. So this is so we're going to start sharing these promising practices of educators. And so just a quick story about this person before I hit the play on the video. So I live in Alameda, and all around Alameda, there has been this woman for the last couple of years. I didn't know it was a woman until now, this person for the last couple of years, who has been putting really positive and affirming notes just in random places around town. So you'll just be walking down the street and you'll see something like, "You can do it," and "You're great," and whatever. And it's the same person because you start to recognize their handwriting. I actually featured one of these statements in a blog post a couple of years ago, just because I just thought it was so cool. Like there's something about it that makes you feel so.
I remember that blog post. I remember reading it.
Yes, it makes you feel so uplifted. And she does a lot of them on this. There's this one, like we live on the water. This one road that runs along the water, a lot of people run on. And for example, she'll put things like, "You can do it, you're great, you're stronger than you think you are." So like as you're running, like, every quarter mile or something, there's some kind of affirming statement. So they're everywhere. And apparently she does them outside of Alameda as well. So somebody did a little video on this woman. So that's what you'll be seeing. She'll be sharing the inspiration of how she comes up with why she shares these, why she does this chalk writing. So we'll hear a little bit from her directly. The reason why I'm sharing it here is number one, it's not only is it cool, but also she's an educator. So once we show the video, a little bit of it, there's a longer clip, we'll connect it to the show. Then we'll talk a little bit about it. So this is our new featuring a promising practice or cool educator person thing. So she's still choosing to stay anonymous, so you won't hear her name, but we're starting the video kind of midway through her telling the story about why she started doing this. So we'll listen for a few minutes.
It's for anyone who needs it. Sometimes I'll be taking a nice walk and I'll just feel a nudge, right here, do it right here in front of this car. And I really just listen to the nudges. We all have that little inner voice inside that says, "Do this, don't do that." I think for people who deal with anxiety, especially, we are very attuned to that inner voice. And sometimes it drives us mad. And if we can listen for the kinder voice inside, that's the comfort. I try to connect to that voice and then translate that to the sidewalk. That's really my hope, is that I can do that. If I'm walking around and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so worried about," I'll take a deep breath. All is well. All is well. Take a deep breath. And then that becomes a chalk. Take a deep breath. All is well. Just right there, wherever I felt that on the spot. Has anyone acted badly to my chalks? Well, yes. That's also beautiful though, because you know what? It's not about just making everybody happy. It's about the human emotional wheel that we all have. I've had people put water on them immediately after I've written it. And I just know, okay, that's just not a place to do it again. I want to be respectful at all times. And that's why I spend a lot of time thinking about what I'm going to put on the sidewalk. Do a lot of journaling, and I try to read a lot. I read from actually everywhere. I get inspiration everywhere. I do use a special chalk that, in my opinion, magical. It's Hagoromo. It has a special coating on the outside. It's very sturdy and durable. It doesn't break easily. My husband dabbles in math, and he had this box in the basement of this chalk. And so I don't know what compelled me to grab a piece of it and put it in my purse, but for some reason I did. And my daughter and I were driving around town, and she has a lot of anxiety and we do a lot of talking. And she said, I don't want to go through puberty. It sounds terrible. And I said to her, hey, I don't want to go through menopause. It sounds equally terrible. And I said, but you know what? We don't have a choice because we are growing and we are evolving people. And so this is just another growth spurt. It's a growing pain. That's why it hurts. So we can either go through it and resist every second of it and make it harder, or we can grow through it and ride the wave and just go with it. So which one do you want to do? Do you want to go through it or grow through it? And she thought for a moment and she said, I guess I'll grow through it. And I said, me too. I'll grow through it too. So I said, let's make it official. I'm going to write that down right there. So I pulled over and I wrote it. That was the very first chalk I did. Go through it or grow through it. Your choice. And it felt amazing. I'm a former teacher. I loved the chalkboard. I know people use whiteboards now, but I loved writing on the chalkboard when I was a teacher. And so I thought, I'm going to do that again. So the next morning I went for a walk. I just left a bunch of messages everywhere. And I had no idea what was going to happen. And then that spilled over to August. And I knew kids were coming back to school and I wanted them to feel excited. And I thought about those kindergartners scared out of their minds for the first day. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to write some messages just to those little babies. So I wrote a bunch saying, your teacher can't wait to meet you. You get a new box of crayons. Your friends can't wait to hang out at recess. And I just did a bunch for the little guys and some for the parents. And people just really received them. And it was a huge surprise to me to see them being so well received. And to my husband, because came home and I said, you won't believe this, but they wrote a newspaper article about this. I can't believe it. It's going to be on the news. And my husband said, oh, that's great. And I said, yeah, I loved that chalk. It was amazing. And he said, what chalk? And I said, your chalk. And he looked at me stunned and he said, did you use it? And I said, of course I did. And he said, how much? How much did you use? And I said, the whole box, all 72 pieces. And he said, no, that special chalk that they closed down the manufacturers of it. They don't make it anymore. It's special math chalk. We kind of got into a little fight about it. I said something cheeky to him like, well, you know, I'm sorry, but this is an algorithm that went viral in a different kind of way, isn't it?
So I'll stop there because I don't know. There's so much I love about that, but I'll give you. I was tearing up, but I'll give you a chance to talk about it first.
One part of it that really resonated when she was talking about it is that the kindergarten. I was thinking about this kindergartners because in Oakland, the kindergartners just came back on campus. They've been on campus a couple of weeks, but it was such a different experience for them because their parents had to leave them at the gate. And so I thought about how powerful it would have been to have these little messages. I mean, they can't really read, so someone have to read them to them. So, not some of them might have been able to read, but most of them can't in kindergarten at this time. But that resonated. And then just the draw to like, what do we get pulled to do that we don't do? Like in that moment, she had this idea to write it down and she did it. And then how many of those moments do we have and say, oh, that would be silly or that's stupid or people are going to think I'm weird or whatever it might be. And she didn't. And I love that.
Yeah, that's what drew me to share it actually is, I talk a lot about connecting with your intuition. And I think people make it sound like this big, scary, or really life shattering, earth shattering kind of thing, or you're going to hear voices, but it's actually that. So what she did there is what I've been trying to talk about in my book and other places, which is you just get a sense to do it. So the first moment was like she was downstairs and she just got this hit to put some chalk in her purse for no good reason. Mm-hmm. It's not like she ever walked around, but she listened to it. Mm-hmm. She was like, okay. And then this conversation happened with her daughter, and she sounds like a great mom, but like a really powerful conversation with her daughter. And then the next hit was, I should memorialize this moment. Mm-hmm. And I have this chalk, and I'm going to pull over, and I'm going to memorialize this moment right now. And she says it so often, she does write them down, but if she has a thought right in that moment, to stop and to write it down on the ground right there. It's just such a beautiful way of responding to and being open to those intuitive hits that we all get. Mm-hmm. And that's what it is to follow your intuition. It's not waiting for some kind of lightning bolt, although sometimes I'm sure that happens. It's those small little nudges coming from inside of us telling us to do something. And doesn't have to make sense. Often it doesn't. But it's just telling us to do something, and you just take one step after the other. She didn't like write them down and be like, I'm going to be famous and people are going to be like following me. It was like, this feels like the right thing to do. I'm going to write it down. Mm-hmm. I remember that those notes that she gave that first week that she did them for the back to school. And it was a couple of years ago. And my son was in 3rd or 4th grade. And I just remember we all were delighted. And she did them at every elementary school in the town. Aww. Every elementary school got these notes. So as you're walking up all around each school.
I remember you telling me about that as well.
I just think it's so delightful. And just such a beautiful, and just like these like, who doesn't want to like come upon an encouraging and positive note? And I also kind of like the impermanence of them, that they go away, that, you can wash them off, but also they just get walked off. Mm-hmm. So something about that also just feels really meaningful to me. So anyway, I love that.
The other component, I think, is that, when she was asked, did people not like it, or did people get angry, and her sort of humility, the way that she shows up with that, and then, okay, it just wasn't right for that person. I knew that, I want to be respectful and not do it there. Like, she seems very grounded, and it seems like the writing on the sidewalk helps her stay grounded.
Yes.
Right. It helps her sort of move whatever's happening in her body, in her space, and whatever kind of emotional response she's having at that moment. And it translates it out of her and into the world in a way that helps somebody else who maybe have some other connection to what she wrote.
Yeah. And to me, she's such an educator. Like as soon as she said it, I was like, of course she is. Of course she's an educator, because that's what we do as educators. We are always looking for and thinking about the feelings of other people. And of course it's chalk, of course it's chalk. And the kind of chalk matters. Of course that matters, because I'm like, I started off teaching with chalk too, and it does matter. But it's just, to me, it also just felt like, this is how educators do. We attend to the feelings of others. We pay attention. We want to be affirming and uplifting. We want to share information with other people in a way that's going to make their lives better. I just think it was such a cool, beautiful way of doing it. And she still does it. So they're still all around town. And she shared that she even, when she's not in town, she does it in other towns nearby. So you could be, if you live in the Bay Area, you could come across a note. But also, if this resonates with you, you too could pick up some chalk and put some positive messages out there. And I've been so shy about it that I haven't done it, because I've thought about it. I'm like, I'm going to put some chalk. I'm going to help her with
you got to follow
your
intuition.
Yeah, but mine's not to do that. So I'm not doing it, because I'm closed when I do that. But yeah, I think it is. It's following that message. But anyway, I just think this is a fun educator feature.
It was a great feature. It was a great first one. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
I'm super excited about this new part of our format. I think we want to elevate the folks that are out there doing amazing work, and there's so many.
There are so many. And these little ways that I think in the field of education, there are definitely times where I could get really tired of all of us educators as well. And y'all drive me crazy, I'll be honest. But then I just keep finding these moments to fall back in love again. And this year I've definitely fallen back in love with teachers and just the innovation of this year, and and administrators and everybody else,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like teachers have borne such a brunt of this last year and the challenges of it. And just to see them meeting this moment too and completely changing every aspect of how they teach school and how they interact with kids and being determined to make it be meaningful, it's so inspiring to me.
It's so inspiring. And I think back to the beginning of the transition into distance learning and how much respect and love there were for educators out there. And then as things have gone on, the discourse nationwide has shifted a little bit. And I just want to make sure that we continue to highlight, because it didn't get any easier for them. It got harder. And the complexities got more complex and the demands got more demanding.
I appreciate you saying that.
And there's so much learning. And I think even back to our episode with Create and Educate, that idea of pivoting, and I really like that idea. We had to pivot, and now are we going to land on the same foot, or are we going to land on another foot? And I see educators landing squarely on that other foot. And change, as you've always said, usually takes so long, and they did it like instantly. So I just have nothing but love and respect for what every educator did this year.
Yeah, you too. Thank you. I got to watch from the sidelines.
Yeah.
I mean, we did our little thing, my nonprofit, but not the same. So, so thanks to everybody. Thank you, all educators. We're excited to be featuring all of you. I think it's a good place for us to wrap up for today.
Yeah. And if you have a story that you think would be a great match for our spotlight on educators, please send it to us via the Communicate with Us on our website.
Yeah, you can communicate it with us on Facebook. So you can go to the Awakening Educator on Facebook and you can give us a message there. You can go to the www.your3EYES website, and there's opportunities for you to submit story ideas there as well.
You can also join the conversation on our Facebook group. In addition, and there's a join the conversation on our website.
That's right. And when we're recording live, which we will be, we'll put we have a bunch of actually exciting shows coming up. I think we have 8 or 9 shows lined up already in this new format, and they're going to be coming out. A lot of them are going to be recorded live. So look out for that. And please, 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 if you could, like the show. That helps us
subscribe to the show.
Subscribe to the show. Like the show and tell your friends. We love doing this, and when you guys like the show or when you share it, it gives us a lot of energy and supports us and helps us also to keep going.
And there's an algorithm, and the more people that like it and the more people that subscribe to it, the more it gets featured on different platforms. So it really, really makes a difference.
It makes a huge difference. So yes, please like, or if you don't like it, that's okay too, frankly. You can also hate on it. We want the feedback either way, and either way it helps us with the algorithm. So please do that. And please share with other people so that we can, so we can know and grow, and also so we can feel like we can get this to other people. I think the folks that we've spoken to have been pretty amazing. I think there's some incredible stories, and more than Susan and I getting more likes and attention, it's really about providing an opportunity for all these different people that we're seeing and speaking to, giving them a larger platform, which is what we want to do.
Yeah, and maybe in closing, we can each say what our favorite, we love all the episodes, but what is the episode that you feel like you're the most proud of, or gives you the most energy, or the most excited, that you would encourage folks to go listen to?
Yeah, you go first.
I would say the one with Dr. Bruce Perry. As those of you who know, I'm really so inspired by the work that he's done in the world, and definitely in line. So that was my favorite episode.
Yeah, that was a good one. It was. When you said that, what came up was one where you weren't there, which I don't really want to bring up, but I'll just say it because it's the one that came up to my mind, probably because I'm thinking a lot about mindfulness lately, because the organization I worked at was a mindfulness-based organization. So, but we did one with Meena Srinivasan around social emotional learning and mindfulness in schools. And she's just one of my favorite people. And I think it was just a really interesting episode about, again, if you're trying to figure out ways to bring mindfulness into your school or social emotional learning into your school, it does have some really helpful tips there. She
Mhm.
and I just kind of geek out on that topic, and it's timely
Yeah,
for where we're at right now. Yeah.
totally. And she was so prepared to share.
She brought a PowerPoint.
She was super on point.
That's the only guest we've had that has had a PowerPoint ready to go and talking points. And so it was good.
Yeah.
She kept me on my toes.
Yeah, and I could now. I'm like inspired to talk about all of the episodes, so we don't want to do that right now with the time that we have left. But there are so many really great
episodes. I love the immigration series.
Yeah, immigration series is great. The story time with Mr. Lamato was so fun,
so
and I
that
laughed
was
a lot.
it was really fun too. We have some good shows, guys. So please listen.
Yeah, listen,
like us, rate it.
Share
tell
it.
a friend, please, and definitely share your ideas. So you know something yourself or someone else is doing something that you'd love to have highlighted in these little features. We are so pleased to be able to do that. All right, bye everyone.
Bye everyone.